What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it's that time of the year for our final review of Black Ops 6. And as always, I'm going to be separating this into two videos. The first one, the one you're watching today, is what I feel Black Ops 6 did right, what I like about the game, just focusing on the more positive elements, and then the second part will be what they did wrong, and the things I didn't like about the game. Keeping in mind, of course, these are all just going to be my opinions. It's going to be highly subjective. It's totally fine if you disagree with any points, and if you do, please let me know why in those comments down below. Also, I just wanted to address something. I am doing this a little bit earlier than most years, and this is due to the fact that Battlefield will be coming out soon, and once I really get into the swing of things with Battlefield, at that point I don't want to be circling back to revisit Black Ops 6. And with that, I also wanted to mention, this doesn't necessarily mean I'm completely done making any Black Ops 6 content after these review videos. I am committed to completing the gun guides right up until the point that Black Ops 7 is released, so there will still be a few gun guides coming, as well as any weapon balancing changes that may happen between now and the launch of Black Ops 7, and then maybe the odd news or update video here or there, but for the most part, Black Ops 6 content is pretty much done on this channel. And with that out of the way, let's dive right into the video here, focusing entirely on the positives. And the first thing I want to mention is Black Ops 6 launched in a very promising state. I remember community hype was actually quite high at the beginning of the game, and relative to many Call of Duty games that we've seen in recent years, it felt quite polished at launch. That of course doesn't mean it was absolutely flawless at launch, but from what I remember, there were no massive glaring issues that were making the game like unplayable or anything. It felt good with a few bugs to work out here or there, and maybe some improvements that we wanted to see and some more content. And that's a lot more than I can say about many recent Call of Duty games. Next up, one of the big changes they made for Black Ops 6 was Omnimovement. So let's talk about that a little bit because I think there are absolutely some positives. However, it wasn't in a perfect state, and therefore there will be a mention of Omnimovement in the second part of this review series as well. But overall, I actually quite like the core of what Omnimovement is in Black Ops 6. It felt really freeing to be able to slide, dive, and sprint in basically any direction. You can make some really cool flashy plays happen with those dives especially, and I really felt like it was just such a big positive for people that like more aggressive movement style Call of Duty games, and I am biased in that direction. I do tend to lean more toward the faster paced Call of Duty games rather than the slower paced ones. I think they maybe took certain elements of this a little bit too far, but in general, I do enjoy Omnimovement, and when I go to play other games like older COD games or other FPS games that don't have Omnimovement, it actually takes some time to adjust to because it feels like you're so limited now without that Omnimovement present. Now, somewhat tying into Omnimovement, but just in general, the core gunplay I felt was quite good as well in Black Ops 6. It didn't feel like there was a crazy amount of unnecessary like camera shake or gun kick when firing your gun. You could see your target quite clearly as you were aiming and shooting. The recoil patterns were also generally quite unique depending on the gun you were using, but at the same time quite predictable, so you could actually learn those recoil patterns, and that felt quite good. Tying that in with Omnimovement as well, I think that really led to very interesting, fast-paced gunplay, which admittedly isn't for everyone. I can totally understand the people that weren't into that at all. But I did kind of like the dynamic of implementing like a sideways slide in a gunfight, for instance, and having various options that you could use while in a gunfight, rather than just standing there and shooting at the other guy that's also just standing there shooting at you. After that, something I know will be quite controversial to say, and some people will disagree strongly, and that's totally fine. I personally think the general spawn logic in the game was better than a lot of recent Call of Duty games and more like traditional Call of Duty, especially in my preferred game mode, which is Domination. With this, it really seems like they brought back a heavy focus on map control in Domination especially, where the most effective tactic is to gain map control, capture your home flag and the B flag, and hold the enemy team in their 1/3 of the map while you control 2/3 of the map. Traditionally with Call of Duty, that was always how Domination worked, and I think a lot of people forget how sticky some of the spawns could be back in the day with old Call of Duty. And I definitely prefer that style, especially in Domination, over what we've seen in many recent Call of Duty games with the quote-unquote squad spawn system that has been introduced to Call of Duty, where it just felt like flags in Domination really didn't impact the spawns all that much, and therefore map control wasn't really a huge part of Domination anymore. And to me, in those games, Domination often felt like team deathmatch, but there happened to be flags that you could interact with. Black Ops 6 didn't go that route. They leaned more in the direction of keeping those spawns sticky. Admittedly, way too sticky in certain situations on certain maps. I'm not saying the spawn system was perfect by any means. And I'll also say for TDM style modes, I did find that to be a little bit too flippy on most of the maps. However, I like the general spawn logic. I like the direction they went in with spawns, and I'd rather they lean a little too heavy in the direction they went into with Black Ops 6 than the direction of like Modern Warfare 2019 or Modern Warfare 2, for instance. Modern Warfare 2. Next up, keeping in mind this is in no particular order here, something I loved about Black Ops 6 was the fact that they brought back traditional prestige. And we finally got rid of the redundant seasonal level system that would reset your level every season and have a hard cap on how high of a level you could even get to per season. I love the fact that at launch, we had access to the full player prestige system with no limits attached to that, and we could just progress at our own pace, and that would add up throughout the entire life cycle of the game. Also, I know this isn't for everyone, but I personally really like the process of prestiging as well, where every time you prestige, it relocks everything, and you get to experience unlocking everything again and working your way through and progressing and having to make do with what you've got until you unlock more things. I personally enjoy that process. I know for some people they don't, but that's also a nice thing about the traditional prestige system is you didn't have to prestige, and if you didn't prestige, you wouldn't be missing out on any gameplay content whatsoever, just cosmetic content. So for me, traditional prestige was a massive breath of fresh air compared to what we've been dealing with the seasonal levels, and I'm glad to see it's coming back for Black Ops 7. I hope it's here to stay for the franchise going forward. On the topic of progression, let's talk a little bit about camo challenges, because I actually quite liked the camo grind in Black Ops 6. I think it was balanced quite well. I am a little bit biased here because I personally enjoy the headshot grind. I know it's not for everyone. I know it made a lot of people quite upset. I personally like it, and I always point to my reasoning here being, with the headshot grind, you don't have to significantly change up your playstyle at all, you just change your point of aim. So it's a bit of a challenge that you can work toward while playing normally, while still supporting the team, while still playing the objective, and it's just when you're in a gunfight, you're trying to aim a little bit higher, you're trying to make sure you're hitting those headshots. So overall, outside of the odd challenge here or there, I really enjoyed the camo grind in Black Ops 6. Next up, something that has some pros and some cons attached to it, so it will be making an appearance in both of my review videos. This is the fact that they had a more simplified gunsmith and attachment system compared to the previous game, which was Modern Warfare 3. I did appreciate the fact that we didn't have like hundreds and hundreds of attachments to choose from, many of which were just worse versions of another attachment that was already there, or in some cases you'd have attachments that were so similar that they did basically the exact same thing, and therefore it just felt super redundant to have them. With Black Ops 6, I never really felt that way. It wasn't completely overwhelming. They also had a really good advanced stat screen. They took that to the next level as well. This is the best advanced stat screen we've had so far in Call of Duty. Then while we're on the topic of weapons and weapon builds, I think they did a solid job with weapon balancing overall throughout the year as well. I can't really recall any moments throughout this game's lifecycle where there was like one gun that was so blatantly overpowered that literally nothing could compete with it. And that does often happen with Call of Duty games where there'll always be at least that one window of time where you remember back in the year where there's one gun that was just totally untouchable. And there's no situation like that that's coming to my mind with Black Ops 6. That doesn't mean that there weren't situations where some guns were on the powerful side and a little too good and maybe needed to be toned back a little bit. But usually they got on top of those, and even when those guns were there and quite powerful, it's not like you couldn't use other guns and still find plenty of success. So all things considered, I think they did quite a good job with weapon balance overall throughout the year in Black Ops 6. I felt confident using most of the guns in the game and performing quite well with them. Next, I have such a random little thing that I wanted to include this video, even though it's so minor. It's still something that when I first experienced this, I was like, why has this not always worked like this? And this is the munitions box. When you throw that down in Black Ops 6, it automatically picks it up for yourself and just gets you moving and into the fight. Contrast that with previous Call of Duty games where you have to throw it down, then you have to interact with it, wait for you to pick it up, and in some cases there was quite a long delay before you could pick it up. And it just feels so frustrating going back to those systems after experiencing this now in Black Ops 6. Again, such a minor thing, but it's one of those minor things that I hope is here to stay going forward for the franchise. Additionally, another gameplay related thing that I was very pleasantly surprised to see for a Treyarch game, this was a callable nuke streak in the game at launch, which is something that, if I remember correctly, we've never seen before in a Black Ops game. I believe Cold War added one fairly late in its life cycle, but it definitely wasn't there at launch. And normally this is an Infinity Ward or Sledgehammer style thing, but I'm glad to see Treyarch has gotten on board with that. And well, with the matchmaking system, unless you see people heavily exploiting things, you're not gonna run into them very often. I really appreciated the fact that they at least added it there, so when you did happen to really pop off and get that crazy streak, there was that huge reward for you if you could pull it off. After that, another totally random addition that I really appreciated with Black Ops 6, and I hope this carries forward for the future of the franchise, this was the addition of console-only crossplay. And this feature wasn't there at launch, but after a bunch of feedback and people pushing for it, they ended up bringing it to us. And I love the fact that that's now there and available for those console players that just want to play against other console players, but they don't necessarily want to limit themselves to just playing against their specific platform. Another thing I like is the introduction of those mastery medals as well for basically every gameplay item in the games. Everything from guns to equipment to score streaks. You can grind through all of those and show your level of mastery by getting those medals or those badges. And I think it's great to have layers of that added into the experience where you don't need to interact with that system at all if you don't want to, but for the heavy grinders out there, the people that really enjoy chasing that completionist, it gives them something to actively chase and work toward throughout the entire year. I thought that was excellent. Also, I guess while we're on this sort of topic, similarly, I think their combat record was pretty good. One of the better combat records we've seen, at least in recent years. Not the best combat record of all time, but I did appreciate the amount of stats that we had available in that combat record. Next, something that wasn't there at launch, unfortunately, but they did bring down the road, and I really appreciated this feature. This was the separate Camo Challenge tab where you could go there and see your camo progress on all of your guns without having to scroll through each gun individually, equip it on your class, then go to customize, then scroll through to see where you're at with your camo challenge. This was significantly more convenient, but unfortunately, like I said, it wasn't there at launch, so for a lot of people, they didn't really get to utilize this because some people had already finished their camo grind before this feature was even added. Then we also had theater mode, which was nice to see back. However, unfortunately, it was in a super buggy state, at least in my experience, and I also found it would fairly often crash the game. But in saying that, I would rather have a buggy version of theater mode than no version at all, so I appreciate the fact that they at least brought it back. I also appreciated the improvements they made to the firing range in Black Ops 6, where they added the dummy that would move to your range drop-off increments for every gun. That made range testing significantly easier for me, so I really appreciated that. And the recoil wall was a nice idea and a nice addition for some people at least. It didn't quite serve the purposes I was looking for, since many of the guns, if you were just letting the recoil do its thing, they would end up way off the recoil wall. So it just wouldn't work if I'm trying to create recoil plots for videos, so I didn't actually use it a whole lot. And I'd love to see them improve on that over time, but I like the fact that they at least brought something like that to the firing range. And while we're on this general section, one last quality of life thing that I really liked that they had in Black Ops 6 at the moment, at the time of recording this video, it seems like it's bugged out and not working anymore. I don't know when this broke since I haven't been playing much lately. But this is the party indicators. They brought these back. They disappeared for quite a few years of Call of Duty, from what I remember at least, where when you get into a lobby, you can see who's in a party with who and how many people are partied up together. And I think that's important information to know before you get yourself into the game, so you know what you're going to be up against when the game starts. Are you playing against a full party? Are you playing against a party of 2 or 3 people? It's really nice to know beforehand so you can adjust accordingly, or so you can just avoid that game. If I'm playing solo and I see a party of 6, I don't think there's any shame in leaving that lobby before it starts, and I'd rather my teammates leave that lobby before it starts compared to joining the game, dying a bunch of time, feeding the enemy streaks, and then leaving the game and leaving me hanging. So basically, I just went over a bunch of features there that Black Ops 6 has that may not be direct gameplay features, but they all really add up to creating what feels like a complete and polished experience. And it was refreshing to see a relatively feature-complete Call of Duty game. Because again, I feel like that's another area that has just been lacking with the Call of Duty franchise in many recent years. And I know it is kind of sad that a lot of the things I'm talking about here, they're things that we've seen before in Call of Duty, and I'm praising the fact that we had them in Black Ops 6, but that's only due to the fact that many of these things went away for so many years, and it's really felt like we've been getting a lot of incomplete games until Black Ops 6. So I think this is a negative for the franchise overall, but if we're just honing in on Black Ops 6, they did a good job in this area for a modern Call of Duty game. And with that, that's pretty much it on this first part of my final review series of what they did right for Black Ops 6. As always with this series, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of little things that I just kind of forgot about throughout the year that I also really enjoyed and probably could have made this list. But these are the primary things that really came to my mind as I was looking back at Black Ops 6. And a big thing to point out here, it's the same every single year. This video is likely to be quite a bit shorter than the second video of what they did wrong, and that's not necessarily because I hated the game or anything. It's just much easier to list out things that I like, rather than talking about things that I dislike, because I feel like that often needs a lot more explanation. Overall, when it comes to Black Ops 6, I actually really thoroughly enjoyed this game, especially at launch. I really like the core gameplay flow. I am somebody that tends to prefer faster paced Call of Duty games with a fair amount of movement mixed in there. And I really had an excellent time with this game, especially within the first few months of its life cycle. However, in saying that, it was far from a perfect Call of Duty game, and I found that it really just didn't hold my attention nearly as much as many other Call of Duty games did throughout the year. And we're going to be talking a lot about why that is in part 2 of this, where I'm going to be exploring the things that I feel Black Ops 6 did wrong. So stay tuned for that one, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Let's focus just on the positives for this one. What are some of the things that you feel Black Ops 6 did right and that you really enjoyed about this game? Do you agree with some of the elements I listed out today? Do you feel like there are some things I missed that I should have included in today's video? Just let me know down below, and I'd appreciate if you keep the more negative comments for this second video. That's where you can let it all out. I just like keeping things separated. That second part will be coming within the next day or two. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.